listeners and subscribers. Hope all is well. So I thought this was interesting here. I'm subscribed to Brian over at High Impact Flicks and High Impact Vlogs, so I'll leave a link in the description. Go check him out. He does great content, very hard-hitting stuff. He says, I was in my local bank yesterday. A woman was ahead of me. Her transaction went fine. When I stepped up to get some cash out, their system went down. There were many people in the drive-through line and about 3 or 4 people inside the bank standing in line. They couldn't deposit or withdraw any cash to anybody. I went ahead and recorded that as it was happening. One day that's bound to happen and last indefinitely. Makes you think about how much cash you keep in banking institutions. The video is short. It'll be up in less than 20 minutes, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. I just thought this was appropriate for the topic that we're going to eventually end up getting into. But before I do that, I think we could go ahead and talk about Venezuela. Okay, so Venezuela, and if you don't know, essentially Venezuela right now, you've got Nicolas Maduro versus Juan Guaido, and what it's coming down to is who the military will listen to, right? The economy has been in free fall since the wealth they've accumulated, the wealth from their oil, that is, ran dry from a lot of the socialist programs that they were funding. The U.S. has placed sanctions on their oil currently, at least until the opposition takes power, Juan Guaido. Okay, so the U.S. could want in on Venezuela's oil, of course. They do have the largest proven oil reserve, so they say, or maybe potentially their gold, right? Because there's been talk about gold being sent to Russia from Venezuela. And if you can look into it here, I'll even link a description for this article. They talk about 20 tons of gold from Venezuela, which is almost $1 billion worth of gold, is being sent out of the country. And for what reasons, who knows? Pick your reasons. People have their own theories. I'm not here to throw fuel on that fire. But if you think about it, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Venezuela is just next in line. And really, all I can do is speculate that the U.S. is making this move indirectly to undercut another nation by proxy to gain tactical leverage on the geopolitical level. It's really the best I've got when it comes to Venezuela here. One thing that I did think was very, very interesting was the Super Bowl, right? How many people watched the Super Bowl. I thought that the fact the government shutdown ended just in time was the interesting thing about the Super Bowl. I don't follow sports, so I'm woefully ignorant about what goes on in those realms, but I know that a lot of propaganda and a lot of those initiatives are ferried through pop culture, like the commercials, the halftime shows you see and things, and related to football and things of the ilk. The Samuel Adams beer they had, right, for Tom Brady, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, looked exactly like the Baphomet. And if you know anything about symbolism, symbols they reveal to the initiated and they conceal from the uninitiated. And that's just one of those things that when you look at and there's some of the symbolism behind it. I know there's a couple different schools of thought about the Baphomet, but when you see something like that in the likeness, you kind of just think like, okay, where is this going? There's a lot of peepers on the Super Bowl, right? In 2017, it was 111.9 million viewers. All right. And in 2018, 103.4 million viewers. And here, 2019, the one that just passed, 114.4 million viewers. Now, look, there is roughly 325 million Americans in the United States. So that's a third of our population watching this. Okay, that's pretty intense. It's a lot of peepers there. And I just think it's interesting about the government shutdown, ending, or at least being placed on pause until February 15th, where we'll either see another government shutdown or maybe the declaration of a national emergency. Because not only was it interesting, so everybody can just settle down and watch the football game for the government shutdown, the presidential alert system that they tested right before Trump started touting national emergency over the border wall and things of that nature. And it's interesting also as well. Everything's interesting, right? The narrative that's being spun. Now, how many of you remember Jade Helm 15? Okay, the unconventional warfare exercises. They had this unconventional warfare exercises, military operations that was done on domestic soil, and it was supposed to be training for foreign engagement because the areas like Texas, New Mexico, California, Arizona, they say that landscape mirrors landscape over across the pond where they do these foreign engagements. And conservatives in Texas and other areas, and even some liberals and others in the alternative narrative community, and even the conspiratorial community, because Jade Helm got labeled as this big conspiracy theory. They were concerned about the actual intentions of what was happening or what was going to happen there. They thought that this was going to be some type of military style lockdown, or was going to segue into some kind of military style lockdown. And there was just a lot of individuals that were very skeptical of what the military was really up to. And they did again another Jade Helm in 2016, and it was just called UX16, UX for Unconventional Warfare Exercise 2016, because it garnered so much national attention. And nobody wanted what was supposed to be coming, which was martial law. That's one of the things that was a big no-no during the Obama administration. Nobody wanted martial law. The media touted this, conservative conspiracy theorists are afraid of military intervention and government shutdown and things like that. And now what's very interesting is the narrative that's shifting, and I've talked about it before, how there are people who believe that a martial law scenario has to happen in order for the bad liberals, your George Soroses and your Clintons and the John Podestas and all the people, all the really bad liberals and the really bad people in the deep state and your Kissingers, they're going to be locked up. They're going to be dealt with. But before that can happen, martial law has to happen first. I think that's a very disconcerting narrative that's happening, because now you see this flip-flop where just a few years ago, everybody was, martial law is this big no-no, and now it has to happen in order for the opposition to be taken care of. And isn't that just appropriate now, where we see there's the conspiracy theory, if you will, about the coup d'etat that's getting ready to happen, the power grab at the presidential and vice presidential level, so that Speaker Pelosi will be introduced. It's just that I bring these things up because it's to add some context into what's out there in the greater, in the ethos out there in the greater sphere of things. Because even if you don't follow these things, there are individuals who do, and these narratives evolve, and eventually, when they catch wind of it in mainstream circles or political circles, they get to control the narrative. They control how it evolves, and then they get to paint whatever picture they like to spin it to their advantage. And if anything is breaking the standard model narratives, and it's breaking course from it, you'll be demonized, and that's just par for the course. Anyway, take care of yourself out there. I'm going to be doing a short follow-up video to this, just to reiterate a few points, especially about the missile launches that all the Russia, China, Japan did, talking about how all this kind of ties into each other. The presidential alert before, President Trump touting the declaration of a national emergency. We'll get into that stuff. California Carter, signing off.